All right. Konnichiwa. My name is Yuta Masuda. I'm from Alice Spring, and you can see my bio on the brochure. So I'm going to just jump on to the content. Welcome, and thanks for tuning in. Today's topic, as I just made the movement, and is maximize engagement. Now, if I ask you, I want you to think about the class that you just taught yesterday. Okay. And if I ask you, I want you to tell me one thing that you want to achieve out of your classroom. Okay. Let that question sink in your mind, and could you think about it for a second? All right. That could be, for example, answer could be positive rapport with your students, or if you're teaching, especially at the higher level, like a year 11, 12, it could be a high score on the external exam. Your goal would be different from person to person. But my point is, as long as you can run a very engaging classroom, very likely that your goal would be achieved. In other words, you will have a very good relationship with the students. You don't need to be really relying too much on the classroom management. Your students will be engaged, so they are into whatever you're teaching it, so that their score will obviously be higher. So it's really a win-win situation. So that's why I put this as today's title. So I hope that you will get something, I hope. And let's get started. All right, so before we talk about engagement in your classroom, another question is, I want you to think about when you get disengaged in your life, not just a classroom. Okay. Now I'm not seeing your face, so I cannot see your reaction, but I would imagine for me, if the content is too hard, so I have no idea, or if it's too easy, so I feel like it's a waste of time, or if it's not user-friendly. Okay. In fact, I get quite angry with this kind of information. For example, like insurance policy, that you must be so sick of it. I really hate it. That they just go blah, 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 blah. And it's very hard to digest that content. That's when you get disengaged. So in order to engage it, just use the reverse psychology and do the opposite things. In other words, you need to differentiate so that you, whatever, let's say if you have 25 students and 5 are high achiever and 5 are low achiever, try to differentiate your lesson to meet the higher end and lower end as well, not just the middle. Okay. And also unpack the material. Okay. This unpack is, to me, one of the key words that I have during my lesson. Okay, so how do we differentiate and unpack at the same time? Okay, because you got to be looking for the practical way that you can use next week. Okay, so you need to differentiate and also unpack so that it is easy for kids to understand. I'm not saying that you need to lower the standard, but you need to unpack whatever the material and also differentiate. How can you do that at the same time? Okay, so that's where today's agenda comes from. And the main agenda is blended learning, because if you do the blended learning, and I'm going to explain what is blended learning a bit later, that allows you to do 2 different instructions at the same time. And also one side will be using the visible technology. Okay, so that's, this to me, this blended learning is a real key. Now, as part of blended learning, you will be also showing the instructional video and also Quizlet Live. Now, these two are part of this blended learning. It goes in, and which I believe you saw that under my brochure. And then if you have time, I hope that I will also talk about the Skype language exchange. This is not part of the blended learning, but it's part of the visible learning. And I do run the sister school language exchange, and kids love it, absolutely love it. So let's hope that I can get to the end. Next. All right, so as I said, what is a blended learning? In case you haven't heard of it, and it's really getting big, especially under the corona, that when you don't have a students, actually, a blended learning is not for the corona distant learning. A blended learning is that students are in your classroom, so you will be teaching half of the group as a direct teaching, and also the other half will be learning by the technology. And then you go swap back and forth and back and forth. That's the blended learning. Now, probably you have also heard the word flipped learning. Now, flipped learning has become a really a big buzzword, and which is to assign your material as a homework. So kids will do that as a digital homework at home. And then during the lesson at school, you will do more like activities or check for understanding the teacher needs to be doing it. And I can see that point. And I tried that, but to me, at least, it did not work. Okay. The reality is that kids just didn't do it. They couldn't bother. Okay. Now, if you're working at really prestigious grammar school, and then your goal is to get the highest possible external exam score, then flipped learning might work. But majority of you, I would imagine, would be rather having maximized class time being engaged. That, if so, this blended learning is the one to go. Okay, so again, let's go back to the original correct question. How do we teach through blended learning? Now, the answer is structure your class. Now, I'm going to show you what do I mean by structure with 3 structures. Okay, so just hang on for a second. But if you structure a lesson, I just want to talk about the benefit for you and for student. For you, you just follow the same structure. So I used to really struggle. Oh my gosh, what I'm gonna do tomorrow? And yes, trying to be creative is a good thing, but it really stressed me out with the lesson plan making. And also, I realized for students also that they cannot predict what's coming. So I always used to get a question, oh, sensei, what are we doing it today? And that was the first question that as soon as the kids came in, they said, what are we doing it today? Okay, and it's not really benefiting student either. That's just my opinion. So those are the 2 benefits of structuring your class. So let's talk about how to structure. Okay. Structure 1 is split the class by level. Now, I am sure that every single class you have a high-end, top-notch, high achiever, as well as low achiever. And you must give a placement test, especially at the beginning in term 1. And the way I do is in the week 1, I will announce. So as soon as I start talking, I finish talking about the rules, consequence, reward. Second thing is I talk about the placement test. And I will tell them those are the content that you need to study, and the placement test will be given in a week 9 or 10 in term 1, because you got to give a time for kids to study. Okay, and to me, it makes sense that placement test would cover not just the 1 unit, but the whole year beginner curriculum. And then if they pass that placement test, in my case, I set the passing score as a 60%. and then they can go to this intermediate. Okay, so they will be knowing that in term 2, it will be beginner and intermediate. Okay, of course, if you're getting a student, same student from previous year, intermediate students will continue to be intermediate. So that term 1 from the beginning, you can start with 2 levels at the same time. Now, structure 2, divide the lesson. Now, let's say if you have 50 minutes lesson, okay, at the beginning of lesson, I use this menu sheet, joking as welcome to the Japanese restaurant, and I use this sheet to explain. So, for example, update is like test is going to be in 2 weeks, parent, papa, mama conference will be coming, so I write this. And then I'm moving on to language. That today I usually give a double language lesson. So I'm going to say first half, I'm going to be with a beginner. We are going to do the body parts, and then you're going to repeat. And then intermediate, you're going to be doing the laptop work, Quizlet, and you're going to do the flashcard. And then second half, I'm going to be with the intermediate, and you're going to be with doing the tick. And then I'm going to explain what this tick means. And then in beginners, you will go to the laptop and you're going to do Quizlet gravity. For example, those of you who have never used Quizlet, I will show you what those terms means. And then I usually finish up with a culture, about 5 to 10 minutes. Right now, I'm showing the Japanese food like okonomiyaki, blah, blah, blah. I took students to Japan. So that's another good one that some of their classmates went to experience the homestay. So I show those, and kids love to see their classmate in Japan. So that's structure 2. Now, structure 3. Okay, this is the most important one, lesson sequence. Now, let's say whatever the unit. So let's say if you teach lesson 3 speaking, okay, which is the sentence using the possession, like boku no, watashi no, kare no, stuff like that. Okay, and you have a bunch of sentences that you want to teach. Okay, now there are 3 things that I want you to think about. First, how many lessons do you want to spend for that lesson 3? Now, in my case, I use 12 lessons, but that's up to you. Number 2, how do you teach from easy to hard? Now, I need to clarify. This is easier task for kids moving to harder task, but they are all talking about lesson 3 speaking. Okay, so there are some tasks that takes the pressure out of kids, and then moving on to the harder task. And then last thing is where does that technology, which obviously for blended learning, you need the technology, where does it kick in? And I will show you that with a chart, which I also share with the kids. Now, this is going to be a little bit overwhelming, so be prepared, but I'm going to explain, and I have a video for you to be watching it. Okay. Now, all right, this is my 12 lesson. I call it as again, lesson sequence. Now, this side, the blue one, is called direct teaching. In other words, I will be with a student, and this side is a backgroup or laptop, okay, that students will be studying. Now, I already discussed about a beginner and intermediate class being split. So I will show you how it works. So let's say the new unit comes, and beginner, they will be first lesson, and they will just simply repeat, and they will use the Quizlet flashcard. Meanwhile, intermediate is here. They're reviewing the hiragana or katakana, or this could be kanji. Okay, so whatever you're teaching. Now, first half of the lesson, I will teach beginner, having students repeat it. Now, I'm going to show you 3 videos: repeat, tick, and word attack. Now, this is the one that I was talking about. The repeat is a lot of it is, it's my side, but then gradually goes towards kids. Okay. And I will show you that in a minute. Now, beginner is here and intermediate is here. Now, the second half of the lesson, intermediate kick here and beginner move here. So they will be watching, beginner will be watching the Google video, and intermediate will be coming here and they will be studying their unit and they're going to be repeating. Okay. And then every lesson they go direct teaching and then laptop for beginner. And for intermediate is the laptop first half and then direct teaching. Okay. Now, I hope that this is a very important part, and I hope that I will have some time left over for the Q&A in case you did not understand. And I'm going to also leave this PowerPoint link for you so that you can access to it. All right, now direct teaching side, this is my classroom and students are sitting on the carpet. I call direct teaching as, that's the teacher word, but I call it as a carpet group. And then there are a bunch of table here on the back side. That's where the quizlet and videos and laptop working is happening. And then again, in the middle of the lesson, then this back table would come to the carpet and they swap. All right, so let's first talk about the direct teaching. Easier task to harder task for students. Okay, now first one is this is an easy one for you to understand. I do, we do, you do. In other words, I is a teacher. Okay, so basically first one repeat is basically majority of work is I am doing as a teacher and kids are just simply repeating. Second, we do it, meaning that you and students are doing it together. It's called a tick. And then last one is you do it. In other words, by this stage, kids are, remember that by this stage, okay, by the word attack, they have studied 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lessons and they already finished repeat and tick. So they are getting more independent. Okay, so I will show you the real lesson. Okay. Now, step one, this is again, I do it, and I am just having students repeat after me. Now you got an idea that I think this is the one that majority of you folks do already. Now then step two is we do it. Now I will be showing that English word, for example, nice to meet you, and I tick it and kids will be saying hajimemashite. Okay, so this is called tick. But again, this is we do together. Let's first focus on those easiest ones. Then I will move up to this part. And if we have time, we will do this. Please raise your hand without calling out. Mr. Joshua? Excellent. Go side. Go. So obviously in that case, I take 5 years old and he tried to say go side, but he said goose side. That was really cute. But that's the tick lesson. Now let's go to the word attack. By this stage, kids are almost becoming independent.
Yes.
Vegan. Go to the hard one.
Nice to meet you.
so this is called word attack. Now, in case to clarify, kids are pairing up as you saw, and one student is looking at the board, and the other one is facing away. Now this is the sheet that was projected in front of the board, and for the tick, okay, there are two different ways to do. Now, first one is tick is this. Now, from Japanese to English, obviously that's easier. Now, I tick it, and kids raise hand and say, nice to meet you. Or nansai desu ka is how old are you? Now, once they become confident, then I go to the other side, which is harder, and I do the tick. Okay. So that's tick. And then by the word attack, I show both. So one child is saying the English, the other one facing away from board. Sorry, English here, nice to meet you. The other one, she was not looking at this, and her task was to say hajimemashite. So that's that tick sheet. All right, now let's move on. Okay, I just want to make sure I talk everything. Yeah. All right, moving on. Okay, and then once they do that word attack, next one on, so we talked about this is Quizlet Live. Now, kids love it. And here we go. This is this one. And I am going to show you the live. I took a video. I bet many of you folks already use the Quizlet, but this live is something you must do. Okay, so this class particularly was a very active class, and as you can see, the competition really fires up on learning. So kids love it. I always get the questions that saying the kids saying, "Sensei, can we do it more?" And how nice is it to be asked by students, "Can we do it more?" And Quizlet Live does make that happen. And then next is mock. Once that live finish as a direct one, the last lesson is mock test. Now, I think this is also important. I always give it 1 week before the real test. And real test means that's the one for the grading purpose. So in order to avoid, oh, sensei, I did not know that test will be like this. Okay? You don't really want that. So that's why I give this mock test. And it is the same format and same points allocation. So during the mock, I will say this is a very similar test, but it is going to be a different question. Okay. So that's a mock test, and I highly suggest that you do this. Okay. Now let's go to the back table. Now this is a one. Once again, I will talk about this one. Okay. That. Back table. All right. As I showed that this side, I hope you can see my screen, is the direct teaching, and then carpet is going all the way to the right hand side. So back table, this is where kids use their laptop, and I have a headphone that kids can put, and they are studying by themselves. Now, before I start using this Quizlet and technology, I used to differentiate with worksheet, and I gotta be really honest, that to me did not work. It was really disengaging. Some students, it was very unfortunate, but they made a paper crane, they start letting it fly. It just did not work. So I said, okay, differentiation is impossible. Okay, now, one of the key things to make this differentiation happen is you got to have an engaging lesson ready for students to go for the back table. so that they are doing their task, so that you can focus on your direct teaching group, and then you swap. Okay, again, I repeat, you got to have engaged lesson for the back table. Okay, so instructional video is one of the very great way, and there are a couple key things to make that more engaging. Of course, you can show some textbook publishers, a lot of textbook publishers these days create their video, so you can show that. But here I'm talking about making your own instructional video. Now, if you know how to make it, that makes it really handy that you don't need to rely on the textbook publisher. Okay, so I have created a video for you to access how to create an instructional video. Okay, but I'm not gonna spend too much time. Hello, folks. I will show you how you can make the instructional video step by step. So let's get started. Obviously, I'm using the Mac. Yeah, I'm going to fast forward just to see a couple important things. If kids see your face as a teacher, I found out that they will listen or pay attention more. You don't this thinking moving around, so you know. Yeah. And then once you do that, this is where I also get e-text and I project that Japanese textbook. And first, you have set this textbook, and also this is called that text to speech, that rather than having kids read it by themselves and then some of them either misread or other kids tease, make fun of other kids, you just highlight it and then text to speech. This is called system and preference, and then accessibility right here. Okay, so that will allow the MacBook, but if you're using Windows, I'm sure that you have the similar function. And then also I use those annotations that I'm showing. And then at the end, I put background music with no word, but it's just something cheerful that you're hearing now. Already do know. Like that. And then that's how I make it. So please access it later if you're interested in learning how to make instructional videos. Now, if you upload on a YouTube, school like mine, they don't allow students to access the YouTube. But then, if you're having any learning management system, for my school, we use Google Classroom. But let's say if you use Canva or their other management system, you can upload it, and then that allows kids to access your video. So it's really handy. And then Quizlet, I'm sure that there are other software to learn the foreign language, such as Quizzes. I'm not sure, but Quizlet is, to me, a lifesaver. And those are called a different study mode. And some allows kids to do that language game with a competition. So they love it. Particularly, they love this gravity. So I just want to show you how to do it. Okay, I'm going to go hard. Right, now, sorry, I am a little bit freaking out with this. It's too hard. Okay, but if you cannot spell right, and then Quizlet will show you how to correct it. And if kids correctly type this, and then the game resume. Meanwhile, kids are being timed, and obviously the sooner they finish, they get more points, and then they can compete with a classmate. So they really, really like it. I highly suggest you would look into this Quizlet as a Japanese teacher. So My point is, laptop combining the videos and Quizlet, that makes it far more engaging than worksheet. And again, that is not going to disrupt your carpet teaching. And also, it works really well for students because they can learn with their own pace. So if they don't understand, they can always go back, and it's not really embarrassing for them. Okay, now I want to show you that this really works by the I want to show by the student survey. So I have recently done the student survey 2 weeks ago, last week actually, week 1, and used the Google form, but this is a response. Now I want to just quickly scroll down. Now, Saturday means at my school, it's a high school. Now, this is the one that since if you differentiate it, it meets the vast majority. Kids love the Japanese culture. And as I said, every lesson, 5 to 10 minutes, I show the culture video. I will talk about the Skype in a minute. As you can see that about 85%, they really like to talk with us, Japanese students. I use the Class Dojo for the management, but here, I'm not going to talk about it. Okay, so that's pretty much it, the survey. The conclusion is differentiation and Quizlet really works. Okay, now bonus one is that Skype exchange. Now, Skype, I do it once a term. And let's say if you have 30 minutes, I suggest that you split really into half. Okay, and so that half will be Japanese time, and then the other half will be English time, so that both school would benefit. I also put 4 stations, 4 laptops rather than 1. So if you use only 1, then say if you have a class of 25, only 1 child is talking and 24 just watching. But if you have 4, more speaking opportunity. And also, if you say, oh, just speak Japanese, obviously your kids will not talk. So you need to pre-exchange the target phrases, and you need to also train your kids. Those are the target phrases that Japanese kids will ask you. So for example, and I use the Quizlet as well to teach and train the kids. So for example, これは何ですか? And have kids repeat. So they will know that they will be asked the hiragana that Japanese kids will be writing on a whiteboard. This is the first Skype one. Okay, so that you teach that. Here is the Skype. Oh, sorry. Here is the Skype videos from my lesson.
Mister, can I? Yeah, let's see. Mister, how do you say can you hear us in Japanese?
聞こえますか? 聞こえますか?
聞こえます。あ、聞こえます。
か。聞こえますか? As you can see that if you have a purpose for kids to be speaking Japanese, they really get into it. So I suggest you look into it. So how do you find the sister school? Now, there is a website called CLAIR, Council of Local Authority for International School. And I also put the link. You can see that Japanese schools, those schools are looking for the Aussie school, as well as those Aussie schools are looking for the Japanese school. So it's like a matchmaking. And this is a form that if you're looking for the form, you fill in, and you can list the preference. Like say, if you want only boys school or girls school, what year level. So you can meet and you first talk with a coordinator, obviously. So that's pretty much it. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I will move on to the Q&A if we have any. So if you could show me your face, if you do not mind. Yeah, and I will stop talking. And yeah, any feedback or question?
Yuta, how do you set up the using the laptops? Is that something you have to share for each level, or do you have your own laptops for Japanese?
Good question. At my school, it's a one-on-one laptop, so all the students move from class to class with their own laptop.
I've got a question. When you do the Skype sessions, how do you like, what sort of technology do you use? What sort of devices and things?
No, good question. So we do have a full laptop we put, which is the same as student laptop. So school have some extra laptop, and I put a corner to corner, 4 different at the end. And if 4 stations are talking at the same time, it disrupts 3 other stations. So the way I do is I put the headphone, and it's called a splitter. Splitter, and let me see. It is like 5 headphones can be hearing the sound from one laptop. If you Google it, it will pop up. Splitter.
You can buy them from Officeworks, yeah. So you just plug it into the audio jack, and it allows you to plug in all the other headphones into the one socket. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about $10 or so. It's very cheap.
Thank you.
I've got a question. Is it okay?
Go ahead.
So when you split the class by level for the placement test, doesn't it encourage students like who are placed in a lower level group?
What do you mean incur? Means like discourage, you mean?
Discourage as in like, oh, I'm not really good at, I'm not really good at Japanese, kind of, I can't do it, I can't do that, kind of try to, compare his level with his peers.
Good question. Very few, but there are a few out of 250 kids. I would say less than 5, but there are some students who say that. But I also use the double standard grading policy. Let me share that. Let me share that screen. Okay, now that's this one. Rather than trying to focus on, can you see my screen? Can you see it? All right. Yeah. So rather than focusing on those students who are discouraged, I try to encourage by saying that if you get into the intermediate, you can see that the grade boundary is clearly higher, and I publish this to kids. And then majority of kids want to get into the intermediate, and then I spend the lunchtime. This placement test is not compulsory because it covers the entire beginner curriculum that you have never learned, but you have 10 weeks to study. And then in a week 9 and 10, please come during lunchtime. And then vast majority In fact, I don't really hear any nagging in the classroom. On a person-to-person base, some kids might say, "Oh, sensei, I really cannot do intermediate. It's too hard." But yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Yeah.
So do you teach when you give the hiragana to your intermediate students, do you then create everything else in Romaji for your beginners?
Could you rephrase your question?
So are you creating two sets of Quizlet and other resources, one in hiragana and katakana if you're teaching that, and one in Romaji?
Correct.
Okay.
Hmm.
And so do you, at some point then, do you start teaching the beginners the hiragana?
Correct. And they start learning from the first lesson as a beginner, but
Yeah.
obviously they don't know all 50 hiragana. So I split by 10 by 10.
Mhm.
And in the beginner, there are 5 or 6 lessons. So each unit, 5 or 6 unit. So each unit would be teaching 10 hiragana. A, I, U, E, O, Kaki, Ku, Keko. That's it for the first unit. Second unit is Sashi, Suseto, Tachi, Sudeto. Does that make sense?
はい。わかりました。ありがとうございました。
Yeah. And,
I've got a question for you, Yuta.
yeah.
How would you go about overcoming stage fright with kids on Skype? Would you, like I heard you mention sort of constant training beforehand with the classes. And I noticed that you also had, like, you'd separate the classes. You had 4 different calls going on at the same time. How would you sort of attack stage fright where kids are just, they don't want to speak in front of the camera, they have no faith in their Japanese? How would you go about
Very good question. I think, as you just mentioned, that split into 4 groups would significantly reduce their stress, because now each group is only, as you just saw the video, it's only 4 or 5 kids. So it's a lot less than 20. And also I assigned the group captain. So I would say, okay, Paul, you will be the captain. Your job is to make sure that not just you as an outspoken person, but every single child will be taking turn to speak. And then those kids are proud to be captain, and then they will give a turn to every child.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'll give that one a go. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, I'm just aware of the time there, Yuta, so we might need to wind it up. I hope everyone's questions have been answered there. But I'd like to thank Yuta for such an engaging session. I think it's given us all lots of really practical ideas that we can implement back in our own classroom to help maximize engagement with our students. So let's give him a big round of applause. Well done, Yuta.
Arigato.
And there were some notes for us on to refer to your material there, Yuta. You're sharing those with us?
I will find out how I can share. Maybe you can let me know, and then I will upload today's Google slide and everything.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And also there will be a link to a Google form for feedback by all the participants as well. So if you could fill that in as well. All right. Thank you very much for attending today's session. And on behalf of the JLTV, thank you very much, Yuta, for your efforts in presenting today's session. It was been fantastic.
You're welcome. Sayonara.
All right. Thank you. Sayonara.